because a lot of sickle cell patients noticed that there wasn't an adequate amount of information within their doctor's offices, within the clinics that they visited, within the hospital. There's nothing available, and with sickle cell, it's such a complex disease. So these families were left with, kind of this big burden of, educating themselves on such a complex disease. This project specifically developed through the request of several sickle cell warriors. With that in mind, we wanted the whole sickle cell community in on this. And, we wanted, from CBOs, we worked alongside Global for Sickle Cell Warriors, and we all came together for this project. And so we had the CBOs, we had patients, and we had caregivers for this. And then we also brought in experts to kind of review content for accuracy. And so, yeah, we're all, this is a collaborative effort that everybody is.
Cry, scream, and they want to know what's happening. I never said a word, what was I going to do? Tell them what? I wasn't sure. I think maybe somebody must have made a mistake about the sickle cell, so I wasn't going to tell them something I didn't understand. So they kept experimenting with the different drugs and all to get rid of the pain, and so to see what would work. So, and that's the way that I got through the crises time and time again. So finally, when I got to a doctor that understood it a little bit, even then when I went to emergency room, I never said I had sickle cell. Somehow they did the research through the records, found out who my primary care was, asked him what's going on with her, and he told them sickle cell. Somebody else would have to say it, but that would not be me, okay? But that was all through elementary through high school. Going to college, what happened? Well, first of all, again, I came up during that era in which, I was living with my grandparents at the time. They told me I was going to college. I said, okay. I just dutifully did whatever they said. And I knew that I had one job to do, go there and get out. And so, anyway, to make a long story short, my life was elementary teacher. There's lots of jobs there. So anyway, the ironic thing is that during our teacher meetings, they would talk about working as a team. And, or your team understand something. And that was not to read this. I don't want you to just read it. I want you to understand it. And how does that apply to your life? So therefore, I got it. The other thing that I did to make sure that it got to your students' desks and teachers' classroom and everything, I had a habit of doing this when I was teaching school. I always looked on the website to see what is the focus this year. And one year it says understanding curriculum, teaching reading across the curriculum, or teaching language across the curriculum. Well, by golly, let me tell you something. I wanted them to teach sickle cell awareness across the curriculum, and that is why we have this. Now, let me say this, is that as a result of my experiences, I have learned to walk and chew gum at the same time. And what I'm going to ask you to do is to walk and chew gum with me along the way, okay? Because you're saying, I know you're sitting there and your plate is full. I have all of this and this woman is asking me to do something. Yes, I'm going to ask you to do something, okay? You should never, ever lose sight of the fact that we need to continue to educate people. And you don't have to stand there and every 2 minutes explain. Explain. If we taught all 9th graders, okay, this curriculum, they will get all this, and it's aligned with the standards, okay, that California and many other states have set, the Common Core curriculum. So all of the standards that and skills that they want They expect the students to know it's here. But along
Christy had been talking about for a long time this desire to provide some support services to make sure the patient voice was in the center of all these different things. And so when I realized everyone was going to be, or a lot of people were going to be at the FDA, I made as many phone calls as I could, calling them individually, all the different community-based organizations that I could think of, and different people that had talked about wanting to come together, these small little groups that are sort of fighting against the tide and wanted to make a bigger impact. And we met in 2014 in February to discuss what would become the Sickle Cell Community Consortium. The consortium was formed to provide sickle cell community-based organizations with the necessary infrastructure, support, training, and resources to build and maintain strong, effective CBOs. The mission is also to provide a platform to harness and amplify the sickle cell patient voice through collective impact to enable sickle cell patients and stakeholders to identify and address needs and gaps and implement collaborative, multi-stakeholder directed solutions. The way for multiple groups to come together to define a problem and then address that problem. Coordinate CBOs, foundations, and community partners to effectively engage individuals living with sickle cell disease to ensure the voice of the patient is heard. We unite to develop a common agenda and with an open and continuous communication, outline and coordinate mutually reinforcing activities for each partner CBO to ensure that the sickle cell disease patient is included in every stage of healthcare, policy, education, research, and awareness. I mentioned earlier before my first presentation that this meeting had taken quite a bit out of me and that I had hit my wall. But I'm holding up pretty well for someone that's hit their wall, don't you think? God is good. The partners, the way that this consortium is organized, credentialed community-based organizations, medical scientific work groups. These are the groups that make up the stakeholders in the sickle cell community. I do want to take a moment to explain credentialed community-based organizations. The consortium does have a credentialing process. This process has been put in empowerment. These numbers are actually from an earlier. We brought out 70 representatives from 21 community-based organizations in 19 states for 31 hours of workshops, training, education, strategic solution development, and collaborative implementation of those solutions. The way that this worked is the General Assembly spent that first day, everyone put their topics on the docket. We created a docket, and then everyone had an opportunity to go to the docket. And when theirs came up, they went to the mic and defined what they saw as a need in our community, as a gap, as a problem we needed to address, as something we needed to do something about. Others were able to come in and provide comments on that. Everything, notes were being taken, they were put up on the board, and by the end of that day, everyone having an equal voice was given 3 stickers to prioritize the top 3 that we as a community would then work to tackle. The next day, we came in with just those 3.
We have these cells breaking apart. We have the cells sickling and getting stuck. And then we have all these other little goodies to help out, our white cells, our platelets, and then these little bitty white things called selectins, which is like the graphics. Selectins hold the cells onto the inside of the blood vessel, and they'll connect the platelets to the red cells and the white cell to the inside of the blood vessel. And then the endothelium is the cells on the inside of the blood vessel. The endothelium itself plays a big role. So over time, one of the reasons you get more affected with disease as you get older is this endothelium gets damaged. It gets damaged by the repeated crises, the repeated inflammation from these cells breaking apart. So this is cool, right? We understand a whole lot more. That's great. So what? Look at all the new targets we have. If we know that each and every piece of this causes problems with sickle cell, then we can start targeting each and every piece of it. And that's one of the neatest things that I can talk about. So again, it's not just a crescent-shaped blood cell that blocks blood flow. There are these other problems. The cells sickle, the cells break apart frequently, and they result in cells sickling and breaking apart, causes all this inflammation and long-term blood vessel damage. A lot of people start to get swollen when they have crises. They swollen in their arms or legs. I always say you look back like when you were a kid, you had swollen hands or feet. Yeah. That's from the blood vessel for people who have active sickle cell crises. And that study is aimed at those real white hooks I told you about, those selectins. It's actually anti-selective. It's taking those hooks out of the tissue so cells can't stick together. That's called the reset study. There's another study that was done. It's actually, the study's been completed. We're all anxiously awaiting results, called SUSTAIN. Some of you may have heard of it. It was another study that an IV drug was given monthly, and it kept those white hooks from hanging onto the cells. We all know about hydroxyurea. Hydroxyurea helps the cells stay round and not sickled, and they also help the cells not break down as much. So we have another target. That's what GBT does. It changes the way the hemoglobin holds the oxygen. So what's really cool is that now we have all these new targets because we understand this disease so much better. And there are a lot of people for whom hydroxyurea doesn't do it. And we have arguments among physician colleagues all the time, and I have some colleagues who say, oh no, the only reason hydroxyurea doesn't work is because XYZ doesn't take it. That's not true. There's some people who take it just fine, it just doesn't work. And that's because it's such a complicated process that's going on. Similar to lupus, similar to rheumatoid arthritis, we're going to be looking down the road at multi-drug therapies. It's going to be that we can put drugs together, we can look at you, do a genetic profile and say, wow, you're going to respond well to A, B, and C, because guess what? We're going to have more than one drug for this disease. And it's not going to be in 20 more years. It's going to be in the next 5 years, we're going to have more than one drug. We're going to have a drug that helps you with your crisis. It's going to help your blood flow better when you're in crisis. We're going to have a drug that helps prevent crisis. And then we'll have some more curative therapies. But we're going to have all these options, and we're going to be able to look at each individual and say what's going to work best for you. And you know what? If that doesn't work, let's try something. So complications. Sickle cell disease can affect every part of the body. I love to tell stories, and we don't have a lot of time, so I won't tell a lot of stories. But I had a young lady not long after I moved to South Carolina who had sickle cell and lupus. Right? That stinks. One chronic disease is bad. Let's have two. One day she was in the hospital and she was really sick. And I stuck my nose where it didn't belong. The internal medicine doctor said, we don't need your help, we got this. And I said, no, you don't, and you do need my help. And her sickle cell disease was really wreaking havoc on her kidney, so we need to change what we're doing to improve her outcome. And the doctor said, oh no, sickle cell's not causing any problems, it's all the lupus. Unfortunately, we never get to say that. We never get to say sickle cell's not involved. It might not be the primary problem. You might have broken your arm falling off an ATV. But that still means we got to think about the sickle cell when we go to operate on it, when we put you in a cast. We still have to consider sickle cell in everything we do. So what we know is that sickle cell can affect all the organs, right? It can affect your brain, your eyes, your lungs, your kidneys, and we got to make sure as physicians and caregivers that we're looking out for your whole body. And we know that as you get older, there's more complications. Who knew that your teeth were involved in sickle cell disease? Did you guys know you could have a crisis in your teeth? Yeah. Turns out you can. Yeah. And your teeth can actually rot and die from sickle cell. They're not getting the blood they need, just like the bones of the hips might not get the blood they need. So these are all different areas we got to figure out new ways and make sure that we are treating the whole body. And we know that if we don't do that, we're leading to early death, but we can prevent it. Complications. So this is mostly the pediatric complications. You can get an infection. That was the thing that we know most of, and that's still what's plaguing people who are living in areas of Africa, people who are living in areas of the Caribbean. Infection is still the biggest cause of death in those areas, in kids under 5 years of age. Thank God we got one thing right in the States. We got a newborn screen, and that really helps us prevent that infection. We also know that sickle cell disease can cause swelling of the hands and feet. In fact, when I went to med school, not that it was that long ago, but long enough ago, that's the textbook picture of sickle cell disease was the baby with swollen hands, because we didn't have newborn screening yet. So that was how we learned to diagnose sickle cell disease. We know you can have crisis pain everywhere. We know you can get gallbladder stones. We know you can get yellow eyes. And that's from those cells breaking down, like I showed you over and over, and releasing all those bits and pieces. One of those is bilirubin. It makes your eyes turn yellow. Won't hurt your eyes. But a lot of people say, man, but my friends make fun of me because my eyes are yellow. So, okay, let's talk about that. How much water are you drinking? Water? Yeah, how much water? I mean, Gatorade. I said no water. Gatorade's not bad, but Gatorade's got a ton of sugar in it, and it's not going to help you like water is. And if you get bored of water, go buy those sugar-free drops you can put in your water. They last a long time, they keep it a little more exciting, and they still aren't as bad for you as Gatorade, soda, or juice. Spleen problems, stroke, enlarged tonsils, and bone infarcts. As you get older, of course, it doesn't exactly get better. Pregnancy. We're still trying to figure out what's the best way to take you through pregnancy. I've had patients tell me, oh my God, I want to be pregnant every day. I've never felt better. And I've had other individuals tell me, I have never felt worse. Again, sickle cell is an individual disease, and so we're going to have to work with you to figure out what's going to work best. Hormones. Hormones are a problem in everybody. Well, we certainly know that our teenage years are rough. And they're rougher with sickle cell because hormones actually cause more crisis. Chronic daily pain becomes a problem. Then you can get heart ulcers, heart problems and leg ulcers, dental problems, and new pain, new triggers, eye issues, and of course medication tolerance and side effects. So why do you have pain? The main reason most people have pain are these nasty bone infarcts. And when we say that, I think people are used to hearing it, but not necessarily understanding what does that really mean. What it means is when the parts of the bone don't get enough blood, parts of the bone start to die. That is what an infarct is, and this is what it looks like. When we do an x-ray, we can see these areas. Now, we can't see them until it's happened over and over and over again and get very thin, and that causes pain, and that causes more disc problems. So it's very concerning when you have back pain. If it's running down your legs or you start feeling tingling or numbness, that's new or different, and that's something you want to talk about. Because as those blocks in your back get narrower, they can squish out that soft disc in between them, and that can actually trigger nerve pain. And we can do something different about that. But we got to know it's there, and your doctor needs to know to look for it. Dactylitis and leg ulcers. Why do people with sickle cell get leg ulcers? Probably a couple of reasons all lined up together. One of them is the blood doesn't flow right. We talked about those blood vessels being stiff. As they get stiffer and stiffer, the blood isn't moving back up from the legs the right way. And enough blood's not getting into the legs the right way. And those ulcers can be very painful and very difficult. You want to make sure you've got a wound doctor that knows what they're doing. The swollen hands and feet, of course, are very. What's all that? You know that our sickle cells are